upfront about who we are as a party. We are a party that believes that we should be at the centre of Europe. We have a long-standing policy of eventually wanting to be part of the EU, perhaps in a generation's time. Let's put a timeline on it, a long way away. But this is a policy that's looking at what businesses in my constituency up and down the country are telling me, what families are saying. You look at the OBR forecasts, you showed the graph earlier. Elsewhere in that document, it tells us that we are 15% down in terms of imports and exports, that our growth is sluggish compared to other comparable nations, and they attribute that to the fact that we haven't got a trading relationship that is giving us best value for money in this country. So what we've set out in our policy is a 4-step plan. The end of it is to apply to join the single market, but actually there's some very difficult steps that we need to take as a country and bring people with us before then. For example, having a veterinary agreement that actually allows our farmers to be able to export properly into the EU to make up for some of that deficit.
All right, but you want to, that is the policy. The motion path is to join the single market, and with it freedom of movement and following all the rules. Julia?
Well, I mean, if the Liberal Democrats want to offer that at the next election and get into power and hold a referendum, or we vote for joining the EU, absolutely. I'm in favour of democratic votes and democratic accountability. Never going to happen. The key thing is Brexit was not just about economics. People who voted for Brexit were told for quite a long time how terrible Brexit would be of us economically, and if we believed that, then we still voted for it anyway. For me, the benefits were going to be long-term. Clearly, they've not been short-term. It's all tied in with lockdowns as well, but also the EU being incredibly obstructive and difficult on a lot of things, and also a lot of failures from this government, no doubt at all. But for me, it was about democratic accountability. I say, if you want to run for office based on that, but do remind me, how many MPs did the Lib Dems get elected at the last election?
So what I think is going to matter at the next... The answer's 11, and now we're 13, because since then, actually, people have seen what Brexit has done. And what I found really interesting is in the Cheshire and Amersham by-election, the fact that we were having sluggish growth, the fact that we couldn't get chefs for our pubs, the fact that people had seen that our farmers and our fishermen had been sold down the river, no pun intended, the fact that people had seen what this actually meant that they were looking at what had been delivered by this government. They found it wanting.
You don't think the fishermen were looking, people were looking at how the fishermen were treated by the French government?
Well, I think it's
and
really...
the threats to cut off...
I don't want to go back to where we were. We are where we are. We are where we are. And actually, we accept very much in this paper that the EU may not even ever allow us to even consider applying. But the principles in here, I think, are ones that need serious consideration. Why are we not looking to rejoin Erasmus+? I do want to make the positive case for freedom of movement, because the lack of workforce that we have in social care, in hospitality, our creative industry is suffering.
Why do you think wages are going up? Because we're not importing cheap foreign labour.
These are all things... Well, the cheap foreign labour, many of whom come from Eastern Europe, we are seeing some extraordinary scenes of bravery and integrity from that part of Europe. I think we absolutely tarred them with a negative brush. I want people to start looking at freedom of movement as the positive thing that it could be. It's good for productivity, it would be good for the economy, and we set that out very clearly in the paper.
Are you persuaded, Claire?
Well, I think it's really interesting that Layla says she's responding to current events when this was their policy at the last election in 2019. So I think what is really important is we had a referendum, we had an election. Those are both resounding results, and I've not seen anything to change them.
Right, but do you agree then with your boss Rishi Sunak, who says this in the Financial Times? He admits UK's dismal recent trade might be linked to Brexit. He was an arch Brexiteer. Even he seems to be admitting that some of the poor economic results, as he put it, could be down to Brexit.
Well, he says there's a lot of uncertainty about it, but in the near term, yes, but I don't think anyone voted for near-term changes to the economy as people have been setting out. What they were looking for is a long-term position where we could link ourselves with areas of growth around the world, which is exactly what we're doing.
So what then proportion of trade have we made up with the new trade deals compared to what we had with the European Union?
My point is that I'm just saying is you have the near term and the medium term, but we are on a path to accession to CPTPP, which is the fastest growing region in the world, which people said we wouldn't be able to do, which is 13% of global GDP.
Right, you say it's near term, but actually the Office for Budget Responsibility has said in its latest report, Claire, that its assumptions about Brexit haven't changed. It will lead to a 15% drop in trade, and that after 15 years productivity will be 4% lower than it otherwise would have been if we'd stayed in the EU. So that's near term, medium term and pretty long term.
Well, I think if you want to talk about really near term, then obviously the benefits of having our own vaccine policy is something that we can...
I'm sorry, I have to... we know that this is just a complete red herring.